Welcome to the Cultivation Podcast. I am your host, Tom Hamill, and this is season 5. So if you're just being introduced to this podcast, go back and check our other 4 seasons, incredible content. But this season is all about words to live by. So we're going to be talking about ways to implement these words or ways to get rid of these words from our lives, because words are powerful and they have meaning. And some of these episodes, I'll have a guest, some of them don't. And today I have an incredible guest. We just met each other in person for the first time, but we've been following each other, partnering with each other. Social media is a great tool for that. So my guest today is Jamil Frazier. Powerful man. I cannot wait for you to hear some of his story, but he's an author. I got my cheat sheets here. He's an author. He's a motivational speaker. He's a certified health coach, a personal development coach. He is the founder and CEO of Think Life is Different. I can't wait for you to hear about that as well. Today, he's coached over 80,000 people, and you get to, for free, on the podcast, hear from him, his incredible wisdom, and his voice. So, Jamil, thank you so much for being with me today. It's my honor. And by the way, I just got to say, your book, 12 Shifts, we're going to talk about that in a second, but superpowers. I was like, oh, this guy got inside my head. It was so incredibly impacting for me, and so I'm super honored and a little... I don't know what the word is, starstruck or whatever. So I'm just glad that you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Man, thank you so much for having me. You know, we were talking about this, and even on my way over here, I was like, I'm going to be on the show with Tom. How amazing is that? No, honestly, seeing your work and just following you on social media and it's more about hearing what people have to say about you. And I knew about you through other people. And
Same.
And yeah, it was more of just their admiration for your heart, your convictions, your values that made me go and press the follow button and really just start following the stuff that you were doing.
I hear you because, again, I read the book. I heard you speak on a large platform stage, and so many of my circles are part of your circles. Yeah. Even though we hadn't met, I heard about your mission, your purpose, your message, and I was like, this guy is on the same frequency as me. I gotta get connected with him. And so here we are.
Yes. Here we are. We even said that in tandem. Here we are.
Yeah, that's right. We're in sync. So before we get into today's word, by the way, is habit.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about that. But before we get into that, tell our audience, those that are listening, those that are watching, before you became an author, a coach, right, and all the things that you're doing, and we'll even talk a little bit about more of what you're doing.
Sure.
Give us some backstory, because many times when people see some of what we're doing in our public persona, they think we were always this way. Right. I heard one guy say, because I live in Orange County right now, and they were like, "Oh, you've always been bougie," and I'm like, "Oh, you don't know where I came from." Right.
And I found that fascinating about you and your story too, because I thought you were just always, clean cut and everything like this.
So give us your background story, and it'll lead to our habits and what it takes to actually. Maybe the word would be successful, whatever that means, right? So, but what are those things? Where did you come from? Sure. And then we'll talk about the habits that it took to start on your journey.
Well, I'm a Southern California kid. I grew up about 2 hours north of here, to essentially a single mother. My mom, to this day, I say, is one of those women who can put the whole world on her back and make it look a little bit easier. But she had some difficulties growing up. She lost both of her parents within about 6 weeks of each other. From that, she went down into a deep depression, and the only way she could really find some solace was through the use of drugs and alcohol. Shortly after she had me, being a primary caregiver of her youngest brother. He got shot and killed pretty much in front of her, which took her down even a darker path. And so, now as a single mother trying to raise, 3 kids, really struggling, she had to find a way to sort of move us out of that environment. So I say the best thing that ever happened to me was she moved us 11 miles east and moved me to a new city to where I fell in love with athletics. And from a young age, I was passionate about sports, and I wanted to receive a college football scholarship. So that became my passion. That became everything that I started working for and working towards, was to one day receive that offer letter to I could attend a 4-year university and play ball. And so I did.
Yeah.
And I got that scholarship and started playing ball and met some amazing people and started doing very well in academics. And once I left school, I got involved in pharmaceutical and medical sales and met a beautiful woman and got pregnant with an amazing son. And it all looks good on the outside, right? That's how it usually looks.
We normally give the highlight reel, right? The Sports Center version of
yes.
how our life is, right?
Yeah. The real story was I was already mentally one step out of that marriage. I didn't want the pregnancy. I asked my wife if she would consider having an abortion. She said no, and I fell into a depression. And for 2 years, I felt like this guy who was stuck in a room with the walls were closing in, and sometimes you have thoughts that you shouldn't be thinking, and you start developing habits that do not serve you, and you start ruining relationships. And I lost my job at one point, and was really looking for a breakthrough, and I ended up finding it by finding a coach that could partner with me, and started to put a little bit more emphasis on going down a journey of getting my body healthier. I put on about 40 pounds over those 2 years, and that's really where the miracle started for me. And that was about 8 years ago.
Wow. So incredible, and it provokes a lot of questions, specifically on the word habit. So I actually wrote down the definition of habit, again, on my little cheat sheet, because I have to write things down to remember them, right? So the word habit, according to Webster's Dictionary online, is a settled tendency or usual manner of behavior. So the word habit is a usual manner of behavior, or number 2 was an acquired, which I found very fascinating, an acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. And then the third one is a behavior pattern acquired by frequent repetition.
Yes.
And so I just thought these were really powerful definitions of the word habit, because as you talked about, even just briefly in your story, habits are neither good nor bad. It's kind of funny how we put good habits, bad habits. We put that vernacular in front of, that noun in front of what a habit is. And I was like, habits are neutral.
Yes.
It's what you're doing with them and the outcome they're producing in your life. So, for example, if I went to the gym every single day as a habit, on face value, that might sound good. But if I'm doing that habit to escape confrontation at home or to escape home life, then it's not a good habit, right? So habits are neither good nor bad. It's what you're doing or the outcome it's producing in your life that make it good or bad. And so one of my favorite authors, James Clear, talks in his book Atomic Habits, says, I'm more concerned about your current trajectory than your current position.
Yes.
Right? So if you're 40 pounds overweight, like you mentioned, or you're halfway out of the marriage, I'm less concerned about your current position or condition and more concerned about your current trajectory, right? And so that's where I find a lot of passion in the word habit, is going, habits so much determine where we're going. I can tell you your future based off your habits.
Yes.
Right? And it's that settled, where have we settled in our life? And so I'm a checklist guy, right? So I love the routine of habit. I love the checklist of habit. I have a morning routine or a morning habit that I just do every single day. which is interesting for me because, during COVID and all of that kind of stuff where you don't go to the office as much, it's like I'm still up at 5 a.m. sitting at the dining room table, listening to the audio version of your book or reading it and underlining it. And, I jack up the books. I bend pages and highlight, and
That's what they're there for.
I devour it, right? That sort of thing. But I've noticed that for me, I've kept that habit. That's my settled on behavior.
Sure.
Right. And so for you, okay, so you come from, troubled past or a dark path, that sort of thing. But academically and sports-wise, that pulled you through probably some really rough times and, I would say helped you not become a statistic, right?
Sure.
So from a single mom or broken home or, all of those things that you described about your upbringing is like, okay, what was it that kept Jamil from becoming another statistic? And maybe you were for a season, if you want to share anything about that, but the habit or structure of sports, academics, right? That sort of thing. So as we talk about this, here's a question. I talked a lot, so I'm going to throw the mic back to you.
Good.
But what do you think are the most important habits we need to implement into our life that would move our trajectory forward, like James talks about, James Clear. I'm dropping his name now. I don't know him, but
yeah,
I feel like I know him from his book.
No, that was one of the books that was also referred to me as being a powerful book. I think to answer your question, what are the most important habits to help someone move in the trajectory of their life really depends on what they want and what the outcome is that they want for their actual life. And then from that, we can start to assess what the actual habits are. For example, in high school, I never drank, I never smoked, I grew up in the church sort of like you, but that wasn't my main motivation for not getting into those type of habits. My main motivation was I told you from the third grade, I wanted to get a football scholarship. That was like literally the thing for me. I saw a guy stand up in church one day, and in church you always have someone who's giving announcements, and they were giving an announcement he was going to Portland State and he got a football scholarship, and I saw the way the audience reacted when he got announced about going to play sports. And so I saw that with being me. And I just sort of, in my mind, if I did anything in terms of not treating my body right, not working out and things like that, then it was going to mess up the thing that I ultimately wanted, which was that football scholarship. So I started creating habits.
Yeah.
I started waking up earlier. I started, in the book I talk about, I talk about the amount of push-ups that I would do, the amount of sit-ups that I would do. At that time, I was a baseball player, so I would get in my room and I would swing a bat, 100 times with my left hand, 100 times with my right hand, and then I would put both my hands together and I would swing again to make sure that that was something that eventually I could become this athlete. So I think a human being needs to ask themselves, well, what do I want? See, one of the challenges with me, even if we just talk about my 2-year depression, my marriage was crumbling. I wasn't finding the fulfillment I wanted. A big challenge was I didn't know what I wanted.
Sure.
I wasn't focused on it. I hadn't even made an agreement with myself with what Jamil wanted to create out in the future. And I didn't even know to do that.
Yeah.
And so the habits that I had were subconscious. I mean, they were things that I would do that I didn't even know that I was doing.
Yeah.
They were thoughts that I was having that I didn't even know I was having. For example, it's funny, I tell my family all the time now. I don't know, in your kitchen, do you have somewhere a trash can where you guys throw away the trash?
Yes.
Okay, where's that located?
It's right at the end of the counter because we have one of those like I'm a geeky nerd guy, right? I got electronics for everything,
Right.
and so it's like one of those smart trash cans that opens and closes.
Sure, we have that one as well. So if I move that trash can and I move it to the other side of the counter, you will for sure continue to walk to where it's been,
Yes.
not to where I've moved it to. And I don't know, it's going to take maybe 2 days, 3 days, maybe even a week because you're used to doing that. It's become subconscious now. It's become something that you have done so many times. You talk about repetition
Yeah.
that you don't even think about. So you would walk into that kitchen and still go to a place that doesn't serve you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what most people do,
Yes.
especially if they don't even know that that object's been moved, if they don't even know what it is they want to create in the
Yeah.
future. And oftentimes, what most people want that they don't even know and they're not consciously focusing on is happiness.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about, well, what are the habits that you do? Well, what are the habits that is going to help you create the things that you want in your life?
Available today, my book, The Life You're Meant to Lead. It's finally here. It's finally available. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from our website, ourcultivatedlives.com. We got it in the tree version. We got it in the e-version. We got it in the audio version where I read the book by the author, The Life You're Meant to Lead, a powerful tool. Pick up your copy today. In his book, High Performance Habits, Brendan Burchard, I think I'm saying his name right. It's not in front of me. He has a quote that he says, most people don't know what they want and they work tirelessly to get it. So we're just so busy working, and yet we can't even articulate or define for ourselves, let alone for somebody else, to say
Sure.
what it is that we want, either out of our career or our family, that sort of thing. And so to bring it back to the definition of habit, again, Webster defines this, right? It's a settled upon tendency, which means when I read that, I thought, I actually can determine my habits by first determining what do I want my destination to
Yes.
be? What do I
Yes.
want my destination to look like? What is my goal for my marriage? What is my goal for my business or my finances or my health and my physical body? And, fill in the blank, right?
Mhm.
What is my goal? And then that actually becomes the guide rails and the guardrails that pushes me towards those habits that I either need to institute or settle on in my life because it's serving that purpose or that destiny or destination, or I remove them because it's no longer serving.
Sure.
And I have found in my life, when I fall back on old habits, right? You made a statement earlier that I get tickled at because I didn't grow up in church. I actually came quite a bit later to church. Like I was a thug. I know you can't tell.
Right.
You can't tell looking at this pale skin and this, whatever. But I was like ghetto, and it's still there, right? It's still there. Trust me. My kids roll their eyes at me all the time, and they're like, "Dad, you."
I can't wait to see it. What are these days?
Yeah,
I want to
right.
see it come out.
209, it will come out, right? Those of you from 209, you know what I'm
Stockton,
talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a special aroma to 209, but nonetheless, when I fall back on some of those habits, whether it's even if it's not a physical habit, but it's just a mental space habit,
Sure.
right? I have the mental capacity to go back on those old things that don't serve me anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And so growing up as rough as I did, both in my family and in my neighborhood, there were mental habits we had to have to survive on the streets,
Sure.
right? And I don't need those anymore. They don't even serve me. That's the old Tom, the old mentality, and like I've broken through that in a lot of ways. But I have to remind myself or even call myself out on that sometimes and be like, what are you thinking? Like, get out of that funk. Get out of that space.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve you anymore, right? And we keep going back to that trash can. So it's so powerful that we actually have the capacity and capability to say, if we'll do the disciplined work of going, who do I want to be and where am I going?
Yes.
To define that, then we can start determining what our habits, we can settle on our habits, right? That sort of thing. So question for you,
Sure.
like the rest of the story, where are you at with your wife? Okay, you've lost 40 pounds because you said you were 40 pounds heavier.
Sure.
Have you lost more than that?
No.
Okay, so, and I would assume you've probably gained more than just health, weight, scale, right? So you can talk
Yes.
about that. Tell me this: your relationship with your wife, your relationship with your son, right? How old he is, the child that you said, hey, I didn't want,
Sure.
what do those things look like? And what are the intentional habits that you're investing into those relationships?
Okay. So,
Hot seat.
wow, this is deep. Um, so my relationship with, so I needed to figure out who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I mean that was the first thing, and oftentimes, in order to make a change, then the pain of staying where you're at has to supersede like that pain of that it's going to take to change. So I needed to figure out who I wanted to be, and I got lucky. I stumbled upon a seminar, and I wasn't a seminar guy.
Sure.
Like I wasn't that guy, Tom. I wasn't going to personal development seminars. I thought it was corny. I thought the people were corny. But on the heels of having divorce papers on the table, I was invited and I went to escape a failing marriage. And while I was at that event, I saw people who were happy. I saw people who were living a life of contentment and fulfillment, and they were serving others. And because they were serving others, themselves were being served and fulfilled. And I got inspired by watching a guy walk across stage, and he was accepting an award, and he was holding his wife's hand on the right hand side and his daughter's hand on the left hand side. And so at that moment, I decided that that was who I wanted to be.
Sure.
I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to get my marriage back intact. I wanted to learn how to become a person who wasn't so egoic and that can actually, serve their mate. And I wanted to break the chains of fathers not being in home. So now I am starting to understand what I want, and I'm giving this background because this is going to shape the ways in which I start to do things, how I start to change my
So good,
habits.
yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yep.
And so upon coming home, while I was at that event, I made a covenant with myself that I was going to start chasing these things. One of those things was going to be I needed to be happy. So now I was going to start to do things that was going to start to move me towards happiness. And I said, well, what's going to make me happy? I love the beach. So I love walking the beach. I love practicing yoga, and I wanted to do yoga in the middle of the day without having to answer to anyone. What was going to make me happy was keeping my son in my house. My wife was going to remove him and move about an hour and a half away. And if I was going to keep my son in my house, then I needed to restore my marriage.
Yeah.
And that was going to make me happy. And I also needed to start becoming financially independent. And so now I have a precedent of where I needed to start going. So this is where the habits start to come in. So now I started developing the habit. I was one of those people that I would convince you that I wasn't a morning person, right? You know how we put
Yeah.
labels on ourselves like
Yes.
that? I'm not a morning guy. I'm shy. I'm insecure. So I would convince you that I wasn't a morning guy. So now my habit began to now start waking up. My dad used to always say, nothing comes to a sleeper but a dream. And so now my job was to start to beat the alarm clock. Okay. Another habit that I started to implement was I hated talking on the phone. I absolutely didn't like it because when I got out of college, before I moved into pharmaceutical and medical sales, I was in an aggressive inside sales position to where I called into companies and I would basically steal executives out of companies in place. I was a headhunter.
Yeah.
And so that left a scar to where I didn't like speaking on the phone. And so one of the habits that I started implementing was I started anyone who called me, I would pick up the phone right away before it rang twice. And so now I can start to move into the habit of actually becoming a person that wants to speak on the phone. I started developing a habit of an eating system. Why? Because I need to keep my body healthy so that now I can start to have the energy and the vitality to start chasing freedom is what I called it. And so I started developing an eating and a drinking habit. Of course, with the yoga, like I mentioned, Now my habits became that I was going to be in Huntington Beach every single day at noon in my vinyasa yoga class. And so now I can start to say, what are the things I'm going to do now that's going to serve that greater picture as to what I want to create out in the future? Before, and if you read shift number 1 in my book, I talk about how so much we do things that's not even ours. So I was developing all of these habits for 31 years. So when you talk about falling back on a habit, yeah, because those 31 years and that subconscious mind doesn't just go away.
Yeah.
It's not like, yeah, man, I'm gone.
Yeah.
No, it's always there wanting to drag you back.
Yep.
And so you have to learn how to fight against that, and the way you do that is becoming conscious, starting to understand that you are in control of your thoughts, and your thoughts lead to emotions, which lead to actions, which lead to habits.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. You started a company, Think Life is Different. What is that all about? How is that impacting the world? What's your mission, goal behind that? Give us the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, so 8 years ago, I started in health and wellness space, as you well know. And one of the ways I wanted to transform my life was by investing in other people's lives. I started learning one of the ways that I will get is if I first give. And we all hear that.
Yeah.
We all hear that. But I never, and I heard it in Sunday school. I heard it in church sermons, but I never understood it. And so as I wanted to restore my relationship and my marriage and my finances, I figured if I could just go and find enough people to serve, then in turn I would be served. And we did, and we started building a really successful health and wellness business from doing that. Now, while I was doing that, I knew that I wanted to motivate and inspire and encourage other people that was outside of this organization that I had built.
Sure.
And so I sort of promised myself that that I would start a company called Think Life is Different. And the way that happened was I was in Seattle, Washington, and my wife and I had taken like a 3-week trip. And I hadn't actually worked in about 3 weeks. And I got a deposit in my account, and this was the largest deposit I have ever gotten, even though I hadn't actually been working. And as I was walking out of the house and walking down the stairs, and I looked at my my phone, I said, "Oh my gosh!" And to think life is so different.
Yeah.
And to think life is so different. I mean, it was just at that time. It was only about 5 years before that I was working so hard and not seeing much fruit from it. And here I am, not working at all, and have been paid more than I ever had before. And so I said, I want to start a company to where it's a motivational speaking company. It's a company that's mission is about impacting lives and touching lives. I had learned so much throughout the journey that I wanted to create educational material for people to start to understand how to find their true genius and become peak performers. And so that's Think Life is Different. We go out and we speak, we motivate, we encourage, we partner with companies and corporations. I do all of the keynote speaking out of Think Life is Different, and this is where our books come out of as well.
Yeah, well, they're incredible. I know that so far I've only talked about 12 shifts because I geek out on it. I love it, and it's so much. I know that you wrote another book as well that has already come out.
Yes.
I think it actually came out before 12 shifts.
It did.
Yeah, and so real quick before we wrap everything up, just tell our audience, where can we find you? Tell us about both books. We're going to do the commercial break right now.
Sure.
Right? So let's just do the plug. Give us the website, the books, and where to get in touch with you at.
Sure. Well, to get in touch with us is really easy. It's just thinklifeisdifferent.com. All of our handles are there: Instagram, Facebook, all those things, Twitter. And the first book is called The Richest Man in Direct Sales. And it was just a book that I made a decision that I didn't want to struggle financially anymore. And I started keeping a document that was just that I was tallying everything that I was doing and the habits of thinking that I was now starting to develop. And I wanted to leave a roadmap for my son, and that turned into a book. And that book, did pretty well.
Yeah. I think they've both done pretty good, but they have done good. So, thanks for being on the show today and being a part of this Cultivation podcast. I really am honored by it, and I appreciate it. And we're gonna share this, and in the show notes and in the show links, we're gonna put those links that Jamil talked about. But as we are kind of wrapping up this conversation on habits, let me just tell you this. Let me give you just this closing challenge that maybe perhaps as you heard us talk today, that your life is not in the destination that you want it to be. And let me just tell you, you are powerful enough. You have the superpowers that it takes to think life is different. It starts with knowing who you want to be and where you want to go, and then you will start implementing the habits. You will settle on the behaviors that you need in order to become that person that you're striving for. And that, my friends, is what the Cultivation Podcast is all about. So check out Jamil's website, check out his books. They're super powerful. In fact, if you sign up on our email list for Tom's top favorite books, that's me, by the way, The 12 Shifts is one of the top 5 books that I recommend to everybody because it is incredibly powerful and awakening that we each need in our lives. So thanks for being a part of the show. Be sure to put a comment either on YouTube or on Facebook. We'd love to hear your stories. What habits are you working on? What are you trying to get rid of? And we'll be sure to tag Jamil. He'll be following this story, but we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from your journey. And as we're always trying to multiply this audience, would you hit the share button if you found this incredibly valuable or useful, or find someone that you think would find this useful? Share this, as you are our best way of getting this Cultivation Podcast out there. Thanks for checking us out today. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the incredible content we have coming out. Also, we'd love to hear from you in the comments section. We read those, we respond to those as we journey together in the cultivated life.